Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Room 5 of Parallel Session 2 of LLTC 2022. My name is Desya, and I will be the person in charge of this room. I will also act as a timekeeper, and I will be reminding the presenter verbally in 2 minutes before the time is up. In this parallel session, each team will have 15 minutes to present and 5 minutes for question and answer session. Each presentation will be moderated by the next presenters. So first of all, let me make sure whether the first presenter is already here. Ms. Pipit Prihartanti, Ika Lestari, and Nandan Sri.
Yes, I'm here, present.
Okay, thank you for your confirmation. Okay, so without any further ado, let us begin with the first presentation by Pipit Prihartanti, Ika Lestari, Nandan Sri, which will be moderated by Artin. All right, Miss Artin, now time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Miss Fabiola. Right, so let me introduce myself. My name is Artina Ayu Utami, and I will be the moderator for the first presentation. The first presentation will be delivered by Mbak Pipit about the title is about a review of studies on metacognitive strategy instruction in the EFL classroom. So without further ado, let's have the presentation for Ms. Pipit. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Atin. Let me share my screen first. Okay, so I hope it's showing to you now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pipit. I am a postgraduate student of UPI Bandung. So today I'll be talking about metacognitive strategy instruction in primary EFL classroom as discussed in some related studies. So this is the structure of my presentation. Let me first start with the relationship between learner autonomy, self-regulation, and metacognitive strategy. So we've heard a lot that learner autonomy is really essential in the 21st century curriculum like today. And to become an autonomous learner, one is required to have self-regulation skills, right? And it is believed that metacognitive strategy provides students with skills that help them become self-regulated learners. According to Oxford 1990, metacognitive strategy is one of the 6 language learning strategies, and it is indirect, which means it supports the language learning. Arctuk and Sahin 2011 maintains that metacognitive strategy is carried out before, during, and after the language learning or the cognitive language activities. And to help students acquire such a strategy, explicit teaching is needed. So in this case, strategy instruction refers to the explicit teaching of a language learning strategy, and it is also known as learner training. So it helps students to apply the language learning strategies and to reach their L2 goals. So I've seen that there have been numerous studies on metacognitive strategy instruction in EFL setting, especially in the high school and university context. However, quite few studies have been done, I think, in my opinion, have been done in the context of primary EFL classroom. So this research aims to explore the explicit teaching of metacognitive strategy in primary EFL classroom within a 10-year time frame. So this research is a systematic literature review, which include 3 steps of searching the article journals from reputable online databases, as well as determining the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And the last step is analyzing the journal articles. During the searching the articles, I use some key phrases, which, for example, metacognitive strategy instruction, strategy training, and EFL classroom as well. So to determine the inclusion and the exclusion criteria, I determined this criteria. So the research question is the guiding criteria for my research, and the publications that I got, which belongs or which meets the criteria, the exclusion criteria, was removed from my reading metrics. So I didn't review the publications or the journal articles, for example, which belong to review article. It should be empirical. And if the article focused on the implementation of metacognitive strategy in, for example, in university level, I also removed those kind of literature. And so after carefully reviewing the literature, I got only 6 articles which meets the inclusion criteria. So for example, this one. So for example, Diaz in Colombian context. Yeah, Diaz in Colombian context studied or surveyed primary school students. So she wanted to teach vocabulary to young learners by the help of the not only, for example, mind map, but also learning journal. So the mind map is the cognitive strategy, let's say cognitive strategy, and the learning journal is the metacognitive strategy, one of the metacognition toolkit. So she combined the cognitive and the metacognitive strategies, using journal and also mind map. And at the end of the beginning and at the end of the study, she also administered a questionnaire survey to the students. So this is one of the study that I reviewed, but unfortunately, I'm not going to go through one by one. So here are the samples of the reviewed studies. And after that, I did also a thematic analysis, and I found this. So here are the results of my study. Most of the studies that I reviewed were experimental or quantitative research. The context, all of the contexts were at primary school and also a language course. The skills targeted in the study were or include vocabulary, listening, speaking, and reading. So for example, one study focused on one skill, only on reading, researching metacognitive strategy during a reading lesson, for example. And so all of the study, most of the study combine the cognitive and metacognitive strategy. Although I'm researching metacognitive strategy, but the strategy training discussed in the reviewed studies that I found also included cognitive strategies. It means that we cannot separate the metacognitive strategies instruction from cognitive language activities. So the researchers in the studies that I reviewed used these instruments to assess the instruction of metacognitive strategy. For example, field notes, questionnaires, interviews, diary, learning journal, as well as individual self-report. So so here are the cognitive and metacognitive strategy training that I found from those 6 studies. So for example, on our left-hand side, those are the cognitive language activities during reading, listening, speaking, and vocabulary learning. And on our right-hand side, those are the metacognitive strategies, also metacognition toolkit that the researchers use to teach metacognitive strategy explicitly to the students under the study. So for example, with the use of learning journal or self-reflection. So the metacognitive strategies are used before, during, or after the cognitive language activities. For example, in a reading lesson, the metacognitive strategy instruction would be like this. So at the beginning of the lesson, prior knowledge activation was done, and then followed by monitoring comprehension. And at the end of the lesson, the students did a post-reading reflection report. So this study, my systematic literature review, illustrates how metacognitive strategy is or has been so this research discuss the explicit teaching of metacognitive strategy in the 6 studies that I found. So the explicit teaching include the use of cards, cues, or prompts, worksheets as well. And discussing a particular strategy during the instruction was also done. So and then this kind of explicit teaching also
Sorry for interrupting, Miss. You have 2 minutes left for the presentation.
Thank you. So this kind of study also involves metacognitive intervention, and it is believed that such strategy will provide students with self-regulation skills, which results in deep learning and better learning performance as well. So to conclude my research, this research, like I said before, it illustrates how metacognitive strategy has been explicitly taught, especially to young learners. So from the result of this study, more research to be done in primary EFL classroom, especially in terms of exploring the student voice or the process of the strategy training that the students experience in the classroom. So this research is not so exhaustive. Probably the future researchers might want to use more online databases and use also different systematic literature review method. And as for the EFL practitioners, so this research suggests that more teachers, more practitioners implement metacognitive strategy training or the teaching of metacognitive strategy explicitly to young learners, in this case, during regular teaching hours, not only integrating, not only, for example, focusing on one skill, but also integrating the 4 skills, especially the qualitative one, the qualitative research, not only quantitative research, just like the previous studies or the studies that I reviewed. So I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. And let's now proceed to the second presenter, Bapak, if I'm not mistaken, Bapak Mukrim Zakriani Hashim from Tadulako University, Indonesia.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Is it supposed to be question and answer first, or just move to the next speaker?
Yes, for the last 5 minutes, it will be question and answer sessions from Ms. Pipit presentation.
Apologies.
All right. Okay, thank you, Ms. Pipit, for very insightful presentation. Now we will have 5 minutes for question and answer session. If you have any question, you can write down your question in the chat box, or just raise your hand or unmute yourself, please. Okay, we have one participant who's like to ask a question. We have Miss Francisca Cristanti. You can unmute yourself, Miss, and ask the question.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just curious in the systematic study, Bu Pipit, what search strategy did you apply in gathering your data?
Okay, search strategy, right? So I did for this study, I did not really sophisticated strategy, like for example, using publish or perish application, VOSViewer, things like that. I did that for my another study, but for this one, only used online databases like SagePub or Taylor and Francis and Google Scholar that can be easily accessed. And then the systematic literature review, actually, if you want to do systematic literature review, which is more sophisticated, you can use Prisma. Yeah, but for this one, I didn't do that. As for this one was my first kind of study.
Okay.
I hope it answers your question.
Coincidentally, I also presented a systematic literature study, so thank you very much.
You're
Bu
welcome.
Pipit.
I think yours is more sophisticated.
Tomorrow we will have a sophisticated one. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Bu
You're
Pipit.
welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Any other participants who have a question for for Ibu Pipit?
May I ask a question, Miss Artin?
Okay. Yeah, Mas Arina, you
Yeah,
can ask
okay.
a question.
Good afternoon, Bu Pipit. Thank you for presenting the topic.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I would like to know whether you face some barriers or what's that struggle in reviewing those papers. If so, how did you overcome with the problem? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Arina. So the first challenge that I faced was finding doing the searching the appropriate or the relevant articles, because I just used Google Scholar, SagePub, and Taylor and Francis journals. So I didn't get a lot, especially when I used very specific keywords, such as, for example, young learners or primary EFL classroom. It was so difficult for me to gain what I wanted to find. Yeah, so that was the first challenge, and the second one is doing the thematic analysis. I think it would be very helpful if we use any other software like NVivo, for example, but I did this research only on Google Docs. So I use Google Docs for my thematic analysis. I also use Google Docs for my reading metrics. Yeah, so I think finding the most relevant applications or tools also one of the greatest challenge of doing a systematic literature review like this. Yeah, you can actually, we can use other, for example, reference manager tool. We can use that for doing this. But like I said before, this was my first study doing systematic literature review, and at the time I didn't know what best tool to use for this kind of study. So I think that's two things that I found most difficult to face in this study.
Yeah.
Finding the literature
Okay.
and finding the best tool as well.
Okay. Maybe just a little sharing.
Yeah, sure.
We have what's that? It's a corpus tool that is free, and you can access it free. But before that, you should register it first. Developed by Lancaster University. You can try W Matrix 5.
W Matrix.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is to what's that?
Thank you
To
very
group-
much.
To group the tokens or words into the semantic category.
Okay, thank you. I haven't heard of before.
Yeah, this
W
one is
matrix
quite
form.
helpful, Miss. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
You're
welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Arina, for raising questions. Now the time is up, so thank you. This is, and I will give the time back to Ms. Fabiola.
All right. Thank you very much for the insightful discussion. Now let us move to the next presentation, which will be delivered by Mr. Mukrim and Mr. Zakiani Hashim. Mr. Mukri and Mr. Zakiani Hashim, are you here? All right. Seems that they are not already here yet. Okay. So let us move to the next presentation. The next presentation, which will be delivered by Miss Artina Ayu Utami from Sanata Dharma University, and the moderator will be moderated by, because Mr. Mukrim is not here yet, so the moderator will be Miss Pipit. So Miss Pipit, time is yours now.
Thank you, Ms. Desha. So let's proceed to the next presenter, Ms. Artin Ayu Utami, which will deliver the presentation on cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies implemented by male and female student teachers in academic reading. So Ms. Artin, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pipit. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, let me share my screen. Okay, is everyone can see the screen?
Yes, we can
Yes.
see your screen.
Right. Okay. This my presentation will be about the cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies implemented by male and female student teachers in academic reading. And I have introduced myself before. My name is Artina Utami, and I'm a master student of Sanata Dharma University. Okay, these are the contents of my presentations, the research consisting of research background, method, research findings and discussion, and also the conclusion and implication. Okay, the reason why I conduct my research is, as we know that reading is one of the compulsory subject, especially for student teacher who take English education major. And based on Nordin et al. 2013, reading is a complex process that involves cognitive activities to gain information. So it involves a process of encoding and decoding information from the text. Thus, many students are face challenge in understanding text, especially when in academic reading. For example, reading journals, because as a student, undergraduate students, they are encouraged to read a lot. So that it is considered important to apply some strategies in reading. So reading strategy is essential for Indonesian student in learning English. Now, let's see brief explanation about metacognitive strategy. It involves monitoring, planning, and evaluating their learning and acquiring the target language. So in practical terms, it means that students know how they learn best and they are able to adjust their method and environment as needed. For example, they doing they highlight during reading, taking notes, and then activate their background knowledge while reading, and also doing reflection after reading. While cognitive strategy, it focuses on how students use their knowledge in learning by repeating, analyzing, and summarizing. So cognitive strategy involves more cognitive process, for example, guessing meanings from the context, or from the context of the text, yeah, from the vocabularies or from the construction of the sentences. And then in my research, I also divide based on expert. Some experts divide the reading activities into 3 stages. The first one is pre-reading, while reading, and after reading. In pre-reading activities, the examples of activities is predicting the content, for example, by looking at the title of the text, and also activate background knowledge. And in while reading activities, the example is rereading the text and also questioning while they are reading the text. And after reading, or in my research, I use the term post-reading activities, including summarize and also evaluating the text. So my research question is, to what extent do students' cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies in academic reading differ among male and female students? So previous studies have conducted this kind of research, but most of them have different results. So I want to know, in different contexts, is it has different results or not, and to what extent it is different. So to find out or to answer the research question, I use a questionnaire for the instrument distributed to the undergraduate students majoring in English language education at one of State University in Yogyakarta. The questionnaire consists of closed and open-ended questions. It was done in March until May 2022. For the data analysis, I use t-test analysis to find the significance, whether there is a different significance of the use of male and female students in applying their reading strategies. And also I use descriptive statistics to find out which strategy has more degree of agreement. Okay, now let's see the result of the data. Okay, the first one, this is the overall research results of from the 3 reading stages. Yeah, as can be seen from the graph that most students agree on applying strategies in pre-reading section. It gained the highest agreement, while the lowest one is while reading. It means that students use more strategies during the pre-reading section. And also I try to make some comparison between the male and female metacognitive and cognitive strategy. As you can see from the graph that the male students generally they are more strategic. They gain higher score than the female groups, and also for the two groups, both are more familiar or are more cognitive strategies. The cognitive strategy is the one in the yellow or orange bar, while the metacognitive is in the blue bar. Yeah, we can see that the orange one is got higher results or higher score. And then let's see for each implementation in the implementation of in each stage. Okay, this is in pre-reading section. The orange is for the female, while the blue bar is for the male students. As can be seen that generally male students get higher agreement on the use of strategy. Only one items of students, female students that got higher agreement. It's for item number 3. I read the topic or heading of the passage. It considered as metacognitive strategy. Okay, and then the highest agreement is gained on I preview the text before. Oh, sorry. For the highest, for the female one is I read the topic or heading of the passage, while for the male is I read the first sentence of the paragraphs first. That is considered as the cognitive strategy. Now, during the reading section, the items has the items in while reading sessions have the most items than the others, and I think, and from the graphs, it can be seen that it's quite equal between female and male, but generally they apply in a high degree or a high agreement on the use of strategy in while reading strategy. Although if we compare with the pre-reading and post-reading, while reading strategy is the lowest one. And then the last one, sorry
for interrupting, Miss Ardene. You have 2 minutes left.
Okay, please wait. Sorry, it's is my screen is still visible for you?
Yes, the screen is still visible.
But still on the slide while reading section,
Yes.
or it has moved?
Still in slide while reading section.
Okay, I think I have. All right, I think I will just continue. I'm sorry for the problem. In post reading section, also the male students got higher agreement in terms of the strategy in reading. And then based on the findings of the open-ended question, it also revealed that most students, they are more familiar with cognitive strategy, because in open-ended question, I asked them to write down their personal strategy when they are reading academic text, and then most of them mention like I read it from the text, and then I guess meaning, something like that. They mostly they mention cognitive strategy. Only a few students mention metacognitive strategy, and it shows that students are more familiar with cognitive strategy than metacognitive strategy. And for the conclusion, that students in this context, in this study, they are applying both metacognitive and cognitive in moderate to high levels. However, most students are more familiar with cognitive strategy. The highest one is by rereading or read it for better understanding. And for the implication of my research for the teacher to give instruction on applying metacognitive strategy during reading, and for the students to be more familiar with metacognitive strategy. And for other researcher, they can explore in the use of metacognitive and cognitive strategy in other skills, or doing applying the metacognitive strategy in learning English, whether it is for listening, reading, writing, or speaking. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Artine, for your engaging presentation. So it's time for a Q&A session. If you have any question, you can just unmute yourself or just type the question in the chat box. Okay, so we've got the first question from Andreas Kurniawan. Bapak Andreas, would you unmute yourself, or do you want me to read the question?
Yes. I will like to ask about what is the connection about cognitive to skimming and scanning reading techniques, because now I am from BB student batch 2022, and I'm from the first semester is the material from basic reading and writing is available about skimming and scanning technique. And I want to ask about the connection about the cognitive and metacognitive. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Ibu
Alright.
Artine, would you like to answer?
Okay. Thank you, Pak Andreas, for the question. I think the connection between cognitive and metacognitive strategy, you mean cognitive and metacognitive strategy, is they are complementary. I mean, you cannot separate them. I mean, it is you can learn best if you can combine the two strategies. For example, you know how to guess meaning from the text by looking at the context. That is the cognitive. But also you can also applying, for example, although you don't understand the text, you keep reading. That is a metacognitive strategy. So in my opinion, both strategy complement each other. Is that answer the question, Pak Andreas?
Yes, thank you for the answer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bapak Andreas, for the question. Ms. Artine, we've got another question. So the second one is from Yohanes Yuka Krisdianata. The question is, what is your suggestion in introducing a metacognitive strategy for students in reading activity?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yuka. In my class, usually I ask them to have some reflection after reading a text. By doing reflection, we can monitor whether we already understand the text or not, or we know which materials is not clear yet for us. So probably you can start from there. You can ask the students to have some reflection, or probably, yeah, the other have another opinion. Thank you.
So, does it answer your question, Miss or Mr. Yohanes?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Bapak, yeah, Bapak
Yeah.
Yohanes. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for the question. Okay, so we've come to the third question. It's from Ibu Francisca Cristanti. Does the p-value result from the independent t-test show significant difference between the strategies implemented by male and female student teachers? So that's the question.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Francisca. Yeah, sorry, I haven't raised that on my presentation. Yeah, based on the test result, the result is insignificant. So there is no significant difference between the agreement or the use of strategy between male and female students. However, we can see that the preferences from the items, there are some differences in pre-reading. For example, the female like to use the metacognitive, while the male got higher agreement or the of the cognitive strategy. Is that
Okay.
answering the question?
Yes, Bu Artine, I actually am glad that there's no significant difference. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're
Okay, so if you have more question, you can just unmute yourself or type the question in the chat box. I think we've still got time for that, for this Q&A session. Any more question? Okay, yeah, so we have 2 minutes left for the Q&A session. So everyone having more question, you can just unmute yourself or type it in the chat box. No more question. So I think if there's no more question, okay, Miss Desha, I think over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Pipit, for moderating the presentation. And thank you very much for Ms. Artine for delivering the presentation. And because the second presenters are not yet here, so maybe this is the end of our second parallel session, and the participants here can move can move to another room. I mean, you can just strolling to room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4 to join in another room to see another presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.